morning. I'm Ellen McSherry, Chief Operating Officer at the NJCPA. Welcome to IssuesWatch with Ralph Thomas. Ralph, who is seated to my immediate right, is the CEO and the Executive Director of the NJCPA. Ralph's guest for today's show is Brad Muniz, who is seated to my far right. Brad is partner in charge of accounting and auditing at Sobel & Company, LLC, and is the current president of the NJCPA. If at any point during the broadcast you have questions, please, we invite you to submit them via the questions tab or tweet them to us at #IssuesWatch so that we may address them throughout the broadcast. Today's agenda will include a look at the national outlook, the New Jersey outlook, and of course our hot topics. But really, before we get into the agenda, we want to deal with matters that are most important at hand. As you can see in front of each one of us, we are well in the swing of March Madness here at the NJCPA, probably one of our most favorite times of the year. And we have our picks here. Now, right before we went live, Brad actually knocked his over, which says to me he is going down.
No, I pick nice, warmer states compared to you guys, and states that have a better tax structure for retirement. But we won't get into that right now.
Oh, method to the madness. You know, we might want to look at that next year when we're picking our brackets, because luckily, when you look at it, all of our 6 teams are still in the running, which is good. Joining us here today is Jonathan. Jonathan is the Huskies mascot. I'm a diehard UConn women's basketball fan, and go Huskies, go Huskies. Anything else you guys want to say on March Madness? Ralph, you've been silent.
I think
going with the front runners, Ralph. Going with the front runners.
You know, you got to run with the big dogs, and so you know, it'd be nice to see Kentucky win, go undefeated. We haven't had a team go undefeated and win the national championship, I think, since Indiana in the Bobby Knight days. I think Bobby Knight was still coaching then. Probably.
I think you meant since UConn.
Yeah. Well, yes. I'm sorry. I'm on the men's side. Yes, UConn has gone undefeated on the women's side, so that's
just setting the record straight, folks.
I just wanted to, you know, okay.
And I had to pick Duke since my alma mater, William Patterson, didn't make it in this year. Maybe next year.
They didn't make it into any of the brackets. Did they make it into the NIT or anything?
High school.
High school. Oh, okay. All right.
Oh my gosh. Actually, they're D3, so they're not eligible for either, but that's okay. All right. According to the AICPA Business and Industry U.S. Economic Survey that was released the beginning of March, optimism about key performance indicators still remains high, but there's been a retrenchment in sentiment since the last quarter. This survey is a forward-looking indicator that tracks hiring and business-related expectations for the next 12 months. As a point of comparison, the U.S. Department of Labor's employment report looks back on the previous month's hiring trends. It kind of gives you, this one's a looking forward versus a looking back. Among other findings of the survey, domestic competition is now the #2 challenge for businesses, up 3 spots from last quarter, and regulatory requirement changes remains the top challenge. The number of survey takers who said their businesses are hiring immediately dropped slightly from 23% last quarter to 21% this quarter. 52%, however, continue to say they have the right amount of employees. Some 64% of businesses say expect to expand in the next year, down from 71% from last quarter. Anticipated growth for profits in the incoming year dropped from 3.9% last quarter to 2.8% for this quarter. Revenue growth expectations also fell from 4.7% to 3.6%. Some 41% of the survey takers said the decline in oil prices has had a somewhat positive impact on their businesses, while 28% said it was neutral. While it's important to note that we're seeing higher optimism on most business indicators that we tracked in the survey last year, it's also clear we're seeing a reset this quarter on expectations for several key categories, and that's something to be mindful of going forward. Ralph, at this time, maybe you can take us through some of the changes in the key categories.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. I think one thing, these statistics or the survey was very interesting, especially when you look at the fact that CPA executives had a very, very high opinion or optimism relative to the U.S. economy. But with respect to their own individual organizations and companies, as you said, there was a reset. While the indicators were still up, they were off from the fourth quarter. Key indicators that were tempered were profit, how people felt about profit, revenue of sales, and expansion. And I think some of that is just, we saw a similar trend back in 2012, at the end of 2012, where there was sort of saw an uptick and then there was a reset. And I think this is just part of a cyclical trend, really, where you're seeing things rejigger, if you will. I think part of the concern is that I think there's still in the back of folks' minds what happened during the economic downturn. And I think while they see the economy as having a lot of potential, I think they're being conservative about the outlook on their own companies, particularly on the profit side. I mean, let's face it, CPAs tend to be a little more conservative, so I think that is factored into how they feel about their own individual organizations in that regard. And I think too, when you talk about expansion, some of the things that we capture in that category are infrastructure expansion, bringing on new employees, and those are always difficult to do on a permanent basis. And I think in the past years, and particularly in the economic downturn, organizations got used to having business as usual with less. And so I think that there's a little bit of hesitancy to really get into the expansion mode, particularly in terms of brick and mortar, and I think also in terms of people. I think in some of the indicators we saw that many companies felt they had the right amount of talent on board. And because it's always difficult when to have a right sizing of people. And so I think that's why I believe, have seen the indicators back off a little bit from the fourth quarter, and that people are just being a little bit hesitant as we move into this current economic landscape. And I think too, what we've been seeing happening in the stock market as well, the back and forth, periods when we have up and down, and I think that makes folks a little bit jittery to making some permanent commitments in terms of revenue projections, and also in terms of expansion commitments. So I think I feel good about the fact that we're at an all-time high. 68% of executives felt that the U.S. economy was going to grow. I just think that we have to get a little bit of stability. It's been interesting, the pricing, what's been happening with the price of gas and how it's been affecting people's sentiment, and the whole, you bring into play also the notion that the Fed may raise interest rates. So I think what I think we'll need to see is a little bit of stability in gas prices, and also stability in terms of what the Fed's going to do. At one point, the sentiment is that they're going to raise taxes, so the market and market conditions react to that, and then they come out and say, well, we're not going to stand pat. Right. So I think this back and forth in terms of, I call it a little bit of indecisiveness, is what we're seeing in some of the key statistics here. I thought it was interesting, and I'll switch to the top challenges for organizations. The big four, or the top four, since we're on March Madness, has remained the same, but there's been a reshuffling of the deck. Right. Regulatory requirements and changes are still big concerns. I think, and we'll talk a little bit later about what's happened with the repair regs, but I think that's a real good example of something that hit, that really sent at least our members, and I think folks in private industry, sort of off the chart.
Into a tither.
Into a tither, yeah. Into a stale, almost a tsunami, if you will, that hit the landscape. So that's the number one concern. It's been the number one concern for, I think, several years now. But I think the notion of domestic competition moving up 3 slots was interesting. Right. To see that, and I'm not quite sure, and maybe Brad will give us a little bit of insights on that a little bit later on, but I think certainly as you look and going back to the indicators, many of the execs felt that it was difficult to raise prices, and so I think that's maybe why domestic competition has risen and the fact that there's this concern about raising prices, and the situation that we see a lot out in today's marketplace is that people lowballing on bids and RFPs, and so I think that's a bit of a concern.
Ralph, real quick to that point, what you're seeing a lot is that I refer to as the commoditization of everything, and the sales relationships that were out there and the personal relationships between businesses and executive sales people, purchasing people are starting to go away. It's, I think, a blend of a change of the generations, the change of the way economy's done with the B2B, the digital era, but the pricing has become very sensitive within, I'd say, across the board of all industries that I deal with.
Sounds right. So we have regulatory requirements and changes still in the #1 position. Domestic competition, employee and benefit costs still remains #3. I think we'll probably see that stay in the top 4 until there's some flesh out of the ACA. Right. And certainly I know as we look here internally at the society, that's one thing that we've been very concerned about. And it's just hard to predict where employee benefit costs are going these days. And then I think the availability of skilled personnel, we had discussions back in our June IssuesWatch about this issue and the whole human capital. And I think while it's #4, I think if I look at what's happening here in New Jersey, I see it as probably maybe a little bigger issue here if you localize it. And that's because we sit in between New York and Philadelphia, and we compete for talent, particularly at the skill levels there. And we're still seeing this effect, I think, of what happened back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where there was a dwarf, if you will, of accounting majors, and now we're starting to build back up. But those folks that are in that mid-manager level, there's just a high demand. I continually get inquiries from our members about looking for skilled people with certain skill sets all the time. So I'm surprised it's at #4. I thought it would be a little bit higher. And I think here, if we were to localize it, I think it would probably be a little bit higher on people's list of one of the top challenges here in New Jersey. So
I'd be interested to know, Brad, are you seeing with your clients the decline from 2 to 4?
I see it as a decline from 2 to 4 because of what their focus is. The businesses, some business owners feel like they're running like a child who used to sit on a chair and lean back when he was a kid and doesn't know if he's going to fall backwards and hit his head or just save himself. And that's the way they feel the economy is right now. It's still skittish. If they're making money, but they're concerned if they're going to be making money next year because of regulatory issues. So the focus is really relating to sales, revenue generation, as we talked about before with domestic competition, and cost cutting. Now, if you're looking at cost cutting, what is one of the biggest areas for you to cut? And it's a lot of times it's salaries, it's personnel. So their concern often is, okay, I can't worry about that right now. What they're not focusing on that I do notice is, you hate to keep bringing this up time and time again, is the generational issue, because a lot of the majority of the business owners are baby boomers. They're used to the old number crunching, data crunching mentality, whereas the generation that's coming in is not, that's not what they're looking for. So they're going to start having that gap of people that have the desire. They should move a little bit more from data crunching to data analysis, especially with the availability to gather information. But the last place where I do see some issues that they are concerned about, but it's not enough to bubble up the concern above #4, is a lack of tradesmen, qualified tradesmen, people willing to go in to either the schools or learn the trade and come out and support. I had an issue with a client who could not find somebody, a qualified welder, and he was looking for somebody young. He wasn't looking for somebody who's experienced. He was looking for somebody young so that he can train them the way they do different things. And it took him about a year to find somebody.
Interesting.
I think one other factor that I see, I think is or really two factors. Industry has come into the mix now. You know, for a while, private industry was sort of out of the market in terms of bringing on more staff. And I think too, we go back to the demographic shift, the fact that baby boomers are starting to retire, and so you know, folks, I think it's just a reality that people are retiring a lot earlier and moving out, and so the challenge of finding people to backfill those positions, particularly with that 1999, 2000, early 2000 period where, you know, particularly accounting graduates were down in that. We certainly have a robust enrollment in accounting and finance today, but it's going to take a while for those folks to come through and be at the level that companies are looking for today. So I think we've got a lot of little dynamics that are playing here, and so it'll be really interesting.
One last comment. You mentioned the generational issues a little bit more. One of the key concerns that I'm seeing with businesses is the succession issues. I just heard of a client that was selling that's been in its third generation because none of the grand or great grandkids wanted to take over. And it's sad to see a family business that has been successful and has had its tough times, really been successful, have to sell because the succession issues.
Right.
And if there's an issue that can be discussed, then IssuesWatch is probably that one down, in the future.
Be a good one. Well, let's switch topics right now. Brad, how about you take us through issues impacting the profession that you see?
You almost had to perform CPR because I thought you were going to mention the word repair regulations.
Not yet. Not yet. It's coming.
No, the issues affecting the profession right now, it's pretty funny. Why don't we go back to Ralph's slide of the top 4 issues, and the first thing is regulatory and enforcement, which we'll talk more later on about AICPA issues that are coming up. But the largest issue, especially now since it's busy season, is the repair regulations, the other tax regulations that came out. The IRS really hit us pretty good this year by coupling the Affordable Care Act and the repair regulations. All they needed was one more issue, and we would have had the perfect storm. Fortunately, in February, the IRS came out and relaxed the regulations for the repairs, saying that the Form 3115 is not required for every filing, and you could just make a simple election. And I will say that fortunately was from the power of the profession. I will give us, the profession, credit for that. The AICPA and the societies pressured the IRS for months. It's not like we just started on December 31st. This went back months in the summer beforehand to relax some of the regulations, and finally in February they did it. The society responded as proactively as they could. While I'm not a tax guy, I was amazed how much discussion I saw going through on the Connect forum and the communication. On February 19th, Tony Nitty from Witham Smith & Brown held a live chat with members, going back and forth. I know the Bergen chapter in the beginning of February, when you think that everybody's crunching, tax returns out, had over 250 people at a tax seminar where Harold talked more about repair regulations and ACA.
I just want to interject a comment. You can't underestimate the power of the open forum. It was all of our members helping members, and to me, the outflow of support, and not just on this particular issue, but many different topics throughout all of tax season. I would say typically there's 15 postings a day, and members are helping each other get through this onerous tax season. It's refreshing to see.
Yeah, I just think the power of the profession is just enormous when all facets come together, and the help that goes back and forth, and I think it's probably a little more than 15 postings a day. I think it's that's probably But that's just great. I think that our members are willing to help each other with issues and situations, and so I just challenge, let's not underestimate the power of the profession, underestimate our ability to come together and have an impact on things such as repair regs or forcing agencies to take a step back and relook at what they're doing.
Yeah, and I hate to get sappy on you, Ellen, but if something to push the New Jersey Society for is that collegial support. When something like this comes out, nobody showed that or thought they were better than anybody, and if somebody raised their hand, everybody was there to help, and that's why we should be telling the young people should be seeing that these are the reasons to join the society and be involved, is because there's help for people there. There were follow-up webinars, as you were saying, things that how the community pulled together. But I do want to give the big thanks to Tony Nitti for all the support he's provided. He actually scared, with some of his comments are actually a little alarming. Thanks, Tony, for making us all sweat in our office with some of your comments. But they were right on point, and it really made us think. And I can't thank our members who participated through this process anymore.
I guess, an interesting note on Tony is he doesn't even reside in New Jersey. He is a member of the New Jersey Society of CPAs. He does work with Smith & Brown, but he resides in Denver. So he was just awesome. And his information is out there. He will take any question from anybody on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, he got 74 questions in a 90-minute period, and I think the transcript from that discussion is available on our website at njcpa.org/live chat. So if you missed it, go back out, and hopefully any issues or questions that you have are answered there, and if not, you could certainly reach out to Tony through Twitter or Facebook or any of the other social media options. He's, I think, on all of them, and he will definitely respond to it. So I want to add my thanks to what Tony has done and what he hopefully will continue to do for us in the future.
One of the other issues that's really impacting us significantly is we're wrapping up for the most part, a lot of our regular audits are wrapping up. Larger SEC engagements have already filed. Right. Smaller ones are getting ready to file. Banking requirement filings are either coming up now or at the end of April, a lot of times, for the audits. But what's going to be hit us after our traditional busy season are the Department of Labor EBP type of audits. And the concern for many of the practitioners out there is the Department of Labor study. A lot of us involved know that the Department of Labor has been looking over some of the audits. There is an anticipated report that will be coming out. In preparing for this, we had hoped that report would have come out at the AICPA Council meeting when we met on Monday. We were hoping that the report would have been out so we could have been discussing it, but it's a lot of speculation right now as to definitely what will be in the report. We have some feelings what will be in there, but it's definitely what will be in there, and how critical it will be of the profession is what concerns us right now. It will require us to put more of a focus on audit quality, particularly as it relates to those engagements, but there should never be a question about audit quality overall. There's concerns about increased costs, and if there's lack of compliance, will there be increased regulation or enforcement? Mm-hmm. That's what a lot of the concerns for people that are not only in the audit area, but particularly those that are in the audit employee benefit plans area right now. Yeah,
I think that without question, that's top of mind. Just a little quick anecdote. I was flying back from a meeting in Florida with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, and I happened to be flying back with Sue Coffey, the senior VP, and all we talked about was audit quality while we were waiting to board the plane, and talking about different options. And so I want I guess our members to know that the profession is on this. It's important that we get it right and get a new process that works, so that the thing that we don't want to happen is for additional regulations to rain down, and also that we no longer remain a profession where we review internally ourselves, and then you have the federal government or other regulatory bodies coming in and doing more extensive reviews.
And I just want to say the impact on business and industry, what they are to be concerned about is that this could increase costs of employee benefit plan audits, and these have always been seen at the business and industry level as just, it's something that has to be done.
Yeah.
Let's try and get it as cheap as possible, and while there definitely is not a correlation, the AICPA will never correlate audit quality to audit fees. But there is going to be extra time spent, and this could be an increase in costs, and for some that's considered a cost center, this is a concern.
Very important, Brett. So before we move to our next topic, I just want to go back. I promised you to have more information on repair regs, but you had talked about the relief that we did receive this year. Is it a one-year deal, or will relief go on for future years?
I think the relief, the regulations are going to be here, continual. I don't think that that they'll ever be extinguished completely, but I do think that the relief will come in, will continue on. I know that the AICPA is pushing very heavily for an increase in the thresholds, the safe harbor threshold, specifically for those that don't have an audit. They say 5,000 okay for an audit, but 500 for non-audit. They would like to see that come up. So I think that the relief will be there, but I do think that there'll be some changes. Because if they don't change, the impact on the smaller entities for this $500 threshold it's going to be a little onerous. And I do think that they're going to just continue to evaluate, because the impact even on larger companies for determining what the units of property are and when they still can expense, it's going to be putting a significant increase of time, possible costs on all entities across the board, because a lot of them are not going to have the expertise in-house, and they're going to have to hire people. So for the industry, great, but we're not here to, live off the blood of others.
Right. Okay, Ralph, let's move on to what's happening here in Jersey.
What isn't happening? Well, I guess, the big conversation, at least the beginning of the year, was centered around the Transportation Trust Fund and the fact that it was going to be bankrupt in June if nothing had been done. And so one of the things that, in our efforts to be a more proactive player in the marketplace, I did an op-ed on the Transportation Trust Fund. And let's roll the video clip of.
I'm Ralph Albert Thomas, CEO and Executive Director of the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to IssuesWatch Update. Back in December, during our IssuesWatch segment, we talked about the need for business groups such as the Society and others like the Chamber, the NJCPA, and other business alliance groups to come together and speak with one voice on issues that were critical to the state of New Jersey. Well, I'm here to say that we've been presented, I think, with a unique opportunity that positions the society to really step out and provide leadership on an issue that is important to our members and certainly the citizens of New Jersey. And those are the death taxes, the estate and inheritance tax. You have probably heard that New Jersey has one of the most onerous estate and inheritance taxes in the country. In fact, we're one of 2 states that have both of these taxes. And in a recent survey that we conducted with Franklin and Marshall, it came clear that many of our members, 81% of them, indicated that the estate inheritance tax, they believe, were 2 issues that were driving people to leave the state of New Jersey. And so this unique opportunity that I mentioned is the fact that we may have an opportunity now to get reform of the estate inheritance tax, and doing that in conjunction with another issue that needs to be addressed here in New Jersey, and that's the Transportation Trust Fund, which is the fund that's set up to make road improvements and infrastructure improvements here. You've probably heard that the TTF is slated to become bankrupt in June of 2015, less than 160 days from now, and that something needs to be done. This morning, the Society issued an op-ed, and that op-ed came out and said, that there's a unique set of circumstances which provides New Jersey lawmakers with the opportunity to tackle two vital issues important to the state's economic climate at one time, and to do so in a bipartisan manner that will unite both parties and both legislatures and the administration in support of physically sound pro-growth policies. And that is work out a compromise deal or package, however you want to describe it, where the issues associated with the Transportation Trust Fund are addressed, and also there is reform of the estate and inheritance tax. Well, with all the discussion that has been going on, there's been this compromise talk about doing an increase in the gas tax and also coupling it with a reform of the death penalty, what we call the death tax, not death penalty, but death taxes, estate and inheritance. Let me give you a little more detail about what I'm talking about. The death taxes here in New Jersey. New Jersey still has just a $675,000 exclusion, whereas on the federal level, that exclusion goes up to $5 million. Also, the rates are extremely high in New Jersey versus other states. Now, switching to the Transportation Trust Fund, 67% of the roads here in New Jersey, roads and bridges, are in poor or mediocre condition. At 14.5 cents a gallon, New Jersey's gas tax is the second lowest in the nation. By comparison, New York has a 50.6 cents gas tax, and Pennsylvania's 32.3 cents. It has remained the same since 1988, at which time it represented about 11% of the cost of a gallon of gas. Today, even with the recent plunge in gas prices, it only represents about 5%. It's also important to note that somewhere between 20 and 30% of the funds raised by our gas tax will come from out-of-state residents who buy their gas when they're traveling on the New Jersey Turnpike or the Garden State Parkway, or if they're traveling through local communities. Thank you for watching this segment of Issues Watch Update. For more information about the position that the Society has articulated, you can refer to the website for a copy of our op-ed and also for the press release.
Well, welcome back. We just want to remind you that if you do have questions, please submit them via the question tab or Twitter, your Twitter feed, hashtag IssuesWatch. So Ralph, back to you.
Yeah, so the Transportation Trust Fund, our op-ed got a lot of reaction from members and from individuals in the business community. And so I did sort of a backstory, if you will, on the op-ed particularly to address some of the concerns that our members had about the whole notion of raising taxes. One of the objectives of the society this year and going forward is to raise our profile in Trenton, to be more proactive on issues. And so we came out with the op-ed because we saw a unique opportunity to get out in front of some things that we saw that were going to be happening, and particularly with around the Transportation Trust Fund, that this issue had to be fixed, and we knew that there was a lot of dialogue and discussion taking place about various solutions. But at the same time, we felt that this presented us an opportunity to put one of our issues on the table that was very clear from our survey that we did with Franklin Marshall, and the fact that there needed to be reform of what we refer to as the death taxes, and in particular the estate and inheritance tax. New Jersey has one of the most onerous in the country, one of two states that, again, have both taxes, and our taxes in terms of the rates are more onerous than in Maryland, who is the other state that has that. And so I think this has put us in the forefront to be considered or referred to as subject matter experts on this issue, because our members are really working day in and day out, and our members both in the practice area and our members in business industry are both working and dealing with this issue each and every day. And so that was the real purpose of doing the op-ed, was to be proactive, to put out a proposal before other things started to hit the market. And we got a lot of support from some key legislators, in particular Senator Orho who has a bill out to reform the estate inheritance tax, and a bill that I think makes a lot of sense, and we're hopeful that it will be something that will will move forward. I must say that as I roll forward to now, the conversation around the Transportation Trust Fund has kind of gotten real silent. Yeah. And I think that there's probably a stalemate of some sort in terms of the solution to take care of this issue in terms of the timing. I think there's a faction that wants a long-term solution, and then there's a group that wants a more shorter-term solution. So I think until that issue gets solved, we'll probably hear continued silence. But again, June is just around the clock. The clock is ticking, and June's around the corner. I know many business leaders were a little bit disappointed in the governor's budget address and the fact that there was no mention about the Transportation Trust Fund or reform of the estate taxes. I think they were really looking for something to be articulated in his address on those two issues about what was happening, what were the proposed solutions. So I know in particular my counterpart at the state chamber, Tom Bracken, who's the president and CEO of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, in a piece indicated his disappointment that there wasn't any discussion about that. And I'm sure several other leaders of business alliance groups felt the same way. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen there. Hopefully there will be. We will continue to press the flesh on trying to get reform of the estate and inheritance tax. And we're going to be looking at some of the other issues that are coming on. There's a discussion about increasing the pension exclusion levels. So we will look at those issues too and weigh in. And as you know, the governor had put together a task force to look at pension reform. And so that report is not come out yet, but when it comes out, we've had a number of our members and volunteers raise their hands that they will take a look at that. And we just want to make sure that all the bases have been touched and all the issues that needed to be addressed in their report or their efforts have been addressed. And I think, again, with the resources that we have, the expertise that we have with our members who work in this space, I think we can bring some benefits to the table. So a couple other things that are happening. We're working closely with New Jersey Business and Industry to look at some things in terms of policies that might be tweaked or changed that could help spur small business growth here in the state. We have a tremendous amount of small businesses here. I think somewhere in the order of magnitude of probably 30,000. Just think if each one hired somebody, the impact that could have. And so if we can find a way to help them in terms of making some changes to policies, credits, tax credits that will help them, go back again, looking at, some of the indicators to get them to say, we need to hire more people or bring on more people, that would really spur the business community here in New Jersey. So we have a small group of our members that are working with our counterparts at NJCPA to look at, what can be done and what we should be talking about on that. A couple other changes that happened. Division of Taxation. I'll give you a little update there. Michael Bryan, who's a society member, stepped down from the division on March 13th. And actually, well, he stepped down, but he also stepped up. He's now moving over to Deloitte to work for Deloitte out of their Philadelphia office. So we're going to miss Michael because he was a tremendous resource there. Having a CPA in that position, somebody who had both public accounting background and experience, both in large and small firms, and then also had industry experience. I think Michael did a lot to improve the relationship between the taxpayer and tax practitioner community, and certainly he was very helpful. He's provided a lot of material for the society on some of our IssuesWatch updates that he's done, and he also participated in a webinar where he answered a whole series of questions, and he's also prepared before our board. So we're really going to miss him, but we look forward to working with the interim acting director, Dennis Schilling, to continue what we have seen thus far in that regard.
Ralph, I hope the administration understands the benefit of being proactive, that Michael used to come and participate in things. And I'm not saying he was a friend that provided favors, that he was far from that. but he provided information so that people had a little bit more insight, and it probably staved off some of the calls that they would get because people understood a little more or anticipated things a little bit more.
Yeah.
So he will be missed, and I hope that Dennis, you know, will be
Continue
as
to carry
helpful.
that torch.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting, one of the good things that I think has shown an improvement in the relationship is that the state has reached out to us to post Michael's job on our website. So any members who might be interested, we'd love to have continue to have a CPA in that area because we think that can be very helpful and work real well there.
Oh, great.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Ralph. So Brad, I know you attend monthly State Board of Accountancy meetings. Please bring us up to date as
Sure.
what's happening there.
Sure. At the state board, there's always issues going on. You know, they have their own director, you know, focus with their acting director. But there's three main issues that the state board continues to focus on that the society always watches. The big one that has changed and the society is concerned about the change, the impact of the change is that the minimum self-study hours of 60 has been eliminated at the board level, has been voted to be eliminated, has you know, one or a couple more hurdles to go through. Our concern, of course, is quality. You know, people taking CPE credits for compliance, not for competence. And also one of our concerns is the nano credits, which I'll talk about in a couple of seconds. In a nanosecond.
In
In a nanosecond. Every few years, the state board reviews their regulations to see how they conform to the UAA Uniform Accountancy Act. That's the Accountancy Act that goes across the country that the state boards under NASBA try to follow. So New Jersey is going to be going through that. To what preempted that discussion or that review was there's actually a change to the educational requirements. New Jersey was very specific as to their educational requirements in the past, and I remember this when I was going through college. You had to have 2 business law classes, where somebody who came from a college out of state didn't have 2 business law classes. So they're changing the educational requirements. They're not saying that, you know, that they're making it easy. They're just getting a little bit less specific in some areas. Again, this is to be more in line with the Uniform Accountancy Act because a lot of students, either colleges don't follow it in state or come from out of state where they have different requirements.
Yeah, I think one on that point in particular, you know, we were, you know, concerned about the change and the implications that it would have on some of the universities, and particularly their graduate programs in accounting. And so there's going to be a transition period. And again, these are proposed regs. They haven't gone into effect yet. To your point, they have to go through another process or two before they're finalized. And we hope that the governor they will be approved by October, which is the deadline. Otherwise, we start all over again, and then we'll be back into, as you mentioned, every 5 years, there's a sunsetting of the regulations underpinning, and they have to be readopted. We're going to be working very closely with the board and also the AICPA on this sunset review, because again, we're trying to see if we can make things a little more streamlined so there won't be such differentiations between jurisdictions in terms of the rules and regulations. So stay tuned. That'll be interesting.
And as much as we try and get things to be the same, things continue being different because, as we said before, the elimination of the maximum of 60 minutes for self-study, one of our concerns is that the AICPA is reviewing, has task force out for the future of learning. NASBA, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, has a task force which I believe Jim Hardenberg from New Jersey Society is part of, to discuss and review future of learning. And one of the considerations as part of that future of learning is what's something referred to as nano credits. Maryland, Ohio has put them out there, and they're starting to move towards this because they feel that this is the way people like to learn now. And we didn't want to see New Jersey start adopting other regulations when there might be others coming up. You know, we wanted to try and get it all together and get everybody moving in sync, NASBA, AICPA, our state board. But unfortunately, they've taken action. But it's good to see Maryland and Ohio being a little bit progressive.
Yeah, and we've really been heavily involved with, in addition to Jim being on the NASBA committee, Jack Daly, who's a former president of the society and the current president of the state board, is also, I think he chairs that subcommittee for NASBA because he's a director at NASBA. So we're definitely going to have our hands in the soup, as you will, as you say, to make sure that we have some influence there.
We do have a question that's come in, and I'm going to toss it to Ralph. Thank you for being proactive and suggesting potentially bipartisan ideas to solve the Transportation Trust Fund and estate tax issues. Do you think Governor Christie would be very unlikely to sign a bill to raise the gas tax? After all, this tax would be levied on many citizens, including the poor, plus it would increase freight costs, raising costs for almost everyday products since many are shipped.
Well, I think that's one of the big questions. The governor has said, and he did say in his his budget address, that he was not going to assign anything to raise personal income taxes or corporate taxes. I think and that's why we proposed the compromise to reform the estate and inheritance tax, sort of as a counter measure, if you will, on that. But I think we have to take a step back and look at the fact that our infrastructure is in need of repair. If we're going to be an environment where businesses want to come to and existing businesses want to expand, we have to improve the infrastructure because that drives business activity in things. So I know the notion of raising taxes is never a popular item in discussion, but I think if you look around the country, we see a number of states where there are Republican governors who are also going down this path because they recognize the need to improve their infrastructure or to spur or do things to spur the business climate. So I think this notion of doing a compromise package makes a lot of sense. And the fact that also when you look behind and peel back the onion, yes, an increase is going to impact people. But when you look at the dollar amount, some of what they're talking about, it's probably maybe $200 to $300 to $400 at most a year on an annual basis. And so one has to ask themselves, is that increase or investment to our infrastructure making a lot of sense in terms of helping to spur business and the business community? I think the other fact that people lose in the discussion around this is that while, yes, citizens in New Jersey will be impacted, a significant, about 20, almost 30% of the taxes are paid by non-New Jerseyans, those individuals that are coming up the New Jersey Turnpike or up and down the Garden State Parkway, who are just moving through the New Jersey corridor to go to New York, Connecticut, to New England, or down south to Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and further south and whatnot. So I don't know. I think if he were to increase the gas tax, that he would look to do something either with some other taxes to reduce the burden there, because we do know too, and this isn't anecdotal, we have empirical evidence that New Jerseyans are leaving New Jersey because of the estate and inheritance tax, the impact. And these are individuals, and just not the upper echelon of the taxpayer structure. It cascades down to the middle class. And so you hear a lot of conversation about, well, the estate and inheritance tax only impacts the top of the taxpayer structure. That's not true. Think about this, and this is one stat that I think people reflect on. The average home here in New Jersey sells for between $350,000 to $375,000. That alone is half of the exemption on the estate tax. And also, when you go over that $675,000 exemption level, it's not a tax on the incremental, it's a tax on the whole amount. So if you go to 676, guess what? The estate tax is on the 676, not the $1,000. Right. So I think we have to keep that in mind, and that's a good question. It's a question that we get a lot about. We think the governor will do that. I think it behooves them. And I will say one final thing. Both sides of the aisle feel that that something needs to be done. The question is what? What is the solution that they agree upon? And so I think it behooves us to make some suggestions and recommendations based upon what we're seeing and hearing from our members about the clients and employers that they work for.
Right. Well, thanks, Ralph. Brad, take us through some of the hot topics now of the profession.
Yeah, it was one of the other areas that is a focus, or I don't want to call it a hot topic, but it is a little bit of a trend change. Is the CGMA, the automatic emission, provided you had certain background, has sunset. So there are tests that are out there. The CGMA, which is put out by NJCPA, which is part of SEMA. Paul Stalin, our past president, past chair of the NJCPA, is very involved with SEMA. And I really give CGMA, SEMA credit for they're being progressive. They're making us look a little bit like we're sitting back at the NJCPA level. So I see that they've come out with an integrated, comprehensive strategic case study. I've been through their website. It's very interesting what they're putting out there. They have a very good competency and learning website, which they've put right out there that they're focusing on 5 areas. Technical, of course, they want to have technical competence. But not just technical. It's technical, business, people, leadership, and ethics. And they clearly put that up there, and I give them credit for how they're laying everything out. There's no lack of clarity. So if you do have the credentials to be a CGMA, I strongly recommend that if you haven't just signed up already, take the test, get the credentials, because it's being internationally recognized at this point. So, a couple other issues: workforce mobility. That is the concern that the ICPA is trying to address, where people are temporary assignment out of state, but they have requirements to pay taxes to those other states. It puts a very onerous requirement, of course, on the employers, but even more on a lot of the employees. A lot of these employees go out of state for a short amount of time. They don't realize they have to file in other states. They go to their accountant, and I'm one of the people that has had this happen, that they come to me and I tell them, you have to file another tax return, and they're looking saying, what? What are you talking about? And it incurs costs then.
Right.
The AICPA is well aware of the customer service issue at the IRS. They're pushing for funding that will be designated for customer service. Of course, the IRS doesn't want that. They want general funding. But that is something that we just talked about on Monday. They do know the hold times of hours, so they're concerned about that.
That dovetails into a great question that we have here that came in. It says, one of my clients received a letter from the IRS requesting verification of his identity. Is this a widespread effort by the IRS?
Well, IRS, I mean, you've seen on 60 Minutes, you've seen it everywhere. They are concerned about identity theft. Star Ledger just had a report on identity theft within the state of New Jersey, and they're very concerned about what has gone out there. What people are taking and filing false returns. So they're going to try and clear things up as best possible, but the IRS administration is well aware of it. They know that they're under the hot gun on this. So.
Anything to add on that, Ralph? You good?
No, I think Brad said it all.
Well, actually, Brad hasn't said it all. So
okay.
This is Brad's last Issues Watch with us. We're sad to see you go.
I enjoyed this. This is for those that are watching. Thank you very much. I sit here and I look at this and I think this is like Ralph's World, yeah. But unfortunately, that makes you Garth then. So Ellen, what you don't know, what you see is that Ellen does a fabulous job over here with giving us hand motions as to what's going on. Tries to rein the two of us in. Ralph, your understanding of the topics is exceptional. I'm just amazed watching it. And even more, I want to thank what you don't see, the people behind the scenes, because I sit here while Ralph's talking, watching them, because I'm like a 4th grader, watching them go on. And I just have to thank you for the hard work you do. From Janice, Heather, Jennifer, Melissa, Ridge, And of course, Don, who has his finger on the button waiting to push in case I say something inappropriate. They do a fabulous job, and this is a testament to the society staff. Ellen, Ralph, everybody, thank you very much. Thank the viewers too. I know that they signed on because of me.
Yeah, you got it.
But Brad, we want to thank you too. You know, it's tough duty being president of the society, and for all the time that you've committed and taken away from your practice and efforts at Sobel and Company. We really appreciate you. You've been a great ambassador for the profession. You know, a former young CPA, that you're still trying to be young. We understand that, but yeah, and that's what we would like to see in the society. Members grow up to assume leadership positions, and just thank you for all you've done to make our society, I think, and not just saying this selfishly, one of the best, if not the best in the country.
I agree with you on that last part.
So we're going to invite you to join us for our next edition of Issues Watch, which will be Friday, June 19th at 9 a.m., 9 to 10. And sitting in Brad's seat will be Frank Boudelet, our new president. That concludes today's broadcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope your teams win.
Go Duke.